that you have to understand in terms of measuring quality. Number two, you should be able to elaborate on the concept of cost of quality as a basis for control and improvement. Number three, you should be able to identify the purpose, development, and scope of performance measurement. And lastly, you should be able to identify the importance of managing information resources in local and global organization. Right, so we'll begin with the first topic in terms of the concepts of measuring quality. So the idea of measuring quality is that you have a situation in many companies where the management or those in charge of the quality control, they just tend to measure the quality of the product or services in terms of the output, meaning the end product. So they only measure the quality once a product has been manufactured or once a product has been sold. And same thing with services, only once they have given or provided the service to the customer, then they will measure the quality of the service. So the idea is that companies, especially the quality managers and the management in general, they have to look at measuring quality in these two aspects. So you have the internal measurement of quality and the external measurement of quality, whether it's a product or service. So the internal measurement is about these elements, the operational and financial performance. So that must also be of quality. So the financial performance, for example, so how well does the company manage its finances? Okay, the accounting, or they call it the bookkeeping of their finances. Okay, the income, the expenditure, investments, if they are involved in that. Okay, the financial flow of the company must be handled with quality. So that counts as the internal measurement of quality of that organization. The human resource, right? So like, as mentioned just now in the video from Kuban, the top quality staff, right? So how you say qualified are the staff in that company, and that can be measured as well to determine whether or not the company has the best employees or the top quality employees for them to carry out their operations. And human resource can also be in terms of other aspects like the recruitment process. Right? Is the recruitment process of quality for the company? And in terms of how they manage their employees, what kind of I say the beban tugas, okay, the workload, the salary, any benefits that are given to the employees, that will also that can also be measured to determine the quality of human resource. Okay, the quality overall of the company, the productivity, okay, how efficient, how effective are the employees, and how effective and efficient is the company in general in producing their products or providing services, and any other organizational effectiveness that can be measured. So this will fall under the category of internal measurements to determine the quality of that company. And for external measurement, you have things like the market performance. So how well is the company doing in the market, depending on the product or service they are in or they are providing. Whether you are in the smartphone market, or whether you are in the automobile market, in terms of services, the online shopping or the food delivery service. So you have a market there at the pasaran, and you're competing with other companies, right? Your competitors, your rivals. So how well you're doing in the market can also be measured, and that will also determine the quality of the company. And the other aspect or other element of external measurement is the customer perception. So how is the perception of the customer towards your product, the perception towards the service, and the perception towards the overall company. So this is something that can also be measured, and I think we've covered this as well in the previous chapters. So the customers can give their feedback in the form of the surveys and so on, or in the online feedback, so that can be used to measure the quality of the company, whether in terms of as I mentioned, whether the quality of the product from the customer's perception, the quality of the service, and the quality of the overall company. So next is the different concepts when it comes to the measurement for quality control. First one is the general concept of measurement. So the concept of measurement means, in the context of managing quality, the act of quantifying the performance dimensions of products, services, processes, and other business activities. When you say quantifying, it means basically you are putting the different elements of your business in numbers. Okay, you're quantifying, putting in numbers. So the performance dimensions of the product, for example. And again, just to use the common example we have used, which is a smartphone. And again, if you have surveyed smartphones before you bought one, you might have gone through different websites and reviews, and they often have these benchmarking or benchmarks for certain performance dimensions, like the what do you call it, the processor, right? The memory of the smartphone, and they have all these graphs, okay? These charts comparing the speed, for example, of the processor or the memory of the phone, right? In terms of things like the battery life of the smartphone. So these are things which can be quantified. So they can measure and put into numbers, and then you can compare the numbers from the different models of smartphones to see which one is better. So the ones with the usually the higher numbers would indicate that that phone is of higher quality. Okay, that's the measurement done in terms of the smartphone example. And same thing applies to other products and services, where you can quantify, you can put that into numbers to measure the quality. And the processes, so you measure the processes involved in the company when you are manufacturing the product or when you are providing the service, right? So in terms of the manufacturing process, okay, from the first step all the way to the final step when you have the finished product. So these different processes in the manufacturing stage, it can be quantified, it can be measured in terms of, for example, the speed, the time, how fast does it take to, for example, for a car to, what they call it again, how fast it takes for them to pasang, okay, to memasang setiap komponen dalam kereta kendaraan. Right? The performance of the machines involved in the manufacturing process that can also be measured. So there are measurements to these processes and other activities related to that particular company, okay, which can be measured. Then you will have those measurement of quality activities done. Okay? Anything that can be measured will be measured. in a company to determine the quality. And then you have measures and indicators. So the concept of measures and indicators referring to the numerical results obtained from the measurement process. Okay, so like again, the smartphone, as I mentioned now, you have the performance dimensions of the smartphone being measured. For example, the battery life. So the measures and indicators would be, for example, in terms of duration. Okay, how many hours does the battery last? Okay, when it is in idle mode, okay, when you're not using the phone. So how long does the battery last? When you're using the phone to play games on the phone, how long does it last, or how many hours? Okay, when you're listening to music or watching videos or surfing the internet on the phone, okay, they are the numerical results. So the phone, if it's in idle mode, can last. Probably some phones can last 1 or 2 days without having to recharge. Okay, these are the measures indicators. And same thing applies to other products and services like the cars. Okay, so again, how far can the car travel on X amount of or X liter of petrol. Okay, so for this amount of petrol, how far can the car go? Can it go 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers before having to be refueled? So these are the numerical results that are obtained when they measure the product or service. And the indicators are often used for not a direct or exclusive measurement. Okay, so measures would be more specific to the dimension or the process and so on. And indicators would be more general. Okay, the indicator in terms of speed, that's very general. Right? Battery life would be general. Durability would be general. Okay? And the actual measurement would be the measures, the numerical results. Okay, so good measurement. Using smart, I'm not sure what that is. So smart here referring to specific. M is for measurable. A is achievable. R is relevant, and T is time bound. Okay, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Okay, in the way that the measurement is done. So when you say specific, referring to it, the measurement of the quality is well defined. It is clear. Okay, the way the quality dimensions that's being measured, you are defining it properly. Again, this can be seen in all these reviews of various products and services that you might have come across online on websites. Okay, so it's very well defined how they measure, for example, the speed of the processor of the phone, or even a computer or laptop, or the battery life. That is well defined how they measure that, or the fuel efficiency of a car. It's very clear, well defined, and even if you are not an expert of smartphones or cars, when you read those measurements, it's easy for us to understand that this is the indicator or the measurement of the product, and it gives us the picture whether or not the product is of quality or not. So that's what you mean by specific. Measurable, meaning that the quality measurement is done with specific criteria. You are not measuring something that in a very general way. It has to be very specific criteria that measures the progress towards accomplishing the quality target. So this is especially when it comes to manufacturing the product. So you have to have the process of manufacturing the product has to be measurable. So there are specific criteria the company must use to measure the quality from start to finish, from the start of manufacturing all the way to the completed finished product. So all those processes can be measured. So it's measurable, and that is one of the preferred or recommended approaches. And then for achievable, meaning that the quality measurement is something that is attainable, it is doable. So the measurements is something that the product or service can achieve. So that is the achievable concept. Realistic would be it is within reach, it is realistic, and relevant. Irrelevant or realistic, different references use different terms. Some say relevant, some say realistic. So the measurement process has to be realistic. Okay, don't the company should not use any some fanciful measurement or indicator. So it has to be something measured, that the quality measurements has to be realistic and timely or time or some say was it time based or timely. So with a clearly defined timeline, okay, the starting date and the target date. So when you are measuring the quality of a product or service, as I mentioned just now, it has to be from start to finish. So the time that it takes to measure the quality has to have a starting date and a target date or a finish date. So this is to create that sense of urgency, okay, to make sure that you are measuring the quality within a specific timeline or time frame, and this will have a clearer indicator of the quality if you measure the quality according to a specified time frame. So this is basically what is meant by the SMART. Next one is easy and cost effective to obtain. Right, so different measurement approaches or techniques that companies will use, and there are a lot of different approaches, different ways that companies can measure the quality. Some might use software, some might use the services of other companies that focus on measuring quality. There are some companies that are in that business, the business of helping other companies measure quality. So they offer their services. So whether they're using a company or whether they are using software, has to be easy to use and cost effective. It doesn't cost too much for the company to use the software, and doesn't cost too much for the company to how you say to use the service of the other company. And then other criteria like clear and unambiguous. Okay, so I think that's included in the SMART just now. So it's specific. Okay, the measurements, the indicators have to be clear. So that's easy for everyone to understand what are the requirements for the quality that will be measured. And then a good measurement also provides actionable information. So the results of your quality measurement can lead to the company taking necessary action based on the results. So if the measurement of the quality resulted in a less desirable outcome or less than a desirable result, then the company can take action to make adjustments or to make improvements on that product or service. And then a good measurement also clearly relates to the customers. So companies must always keep the customer in mind, even when they are measuring quality of the product or service, because at the end, it's the customers who are going to use the product or service. So they must also be considered as well in the process of measurement. Provide a scorecard of business performance. So this is a very common approach when it comes to measuring quality. Companies will have a scorecard. So it provides how you say, more organized way of keeping track of the quality measurement of the product or service, and must be available and communicated to workers and managers when they need them. So the information regarding the results of the quality measurements must be readily available to those who need the information, whether it's the employees involved in the manufacturing process, for example, so they need information on the quality of the process to determine how they can improve the manufacturing process. So those involved in that process should have the information available to them. And same thing with the managers or the management. If they want to make decisions on the product or service, they also need the information on the measurements of the quality. Right, so these are the other criteria. Okay, so I think we'll just take a short break and then we'll continue with the next topics on common quality measurement. Okay, we'll continue after this break. All right, so let's continue with chapter 7 on common quality measurement. So the common quality measurement is, of course, focus on the outcomes. So this is the part that I mentioned early on, where most of the companies tend to measure the quality in the context of the outcomes or the output of their manufacturing or service process. So this includes several terms and concepts: the unit of work, the uh, no idea what the OP is, of a process step. In non-conformance, any defect or error associated with a unique unit of work, and non-conforming unit of work. So when you have one or more defects or errors. So the measures in quality control, you have these two: attribute measurement and variable measurement. So the attribute measurement is the number of non-conformance in a unit of work. Okay, the number of non-conformance. So the number of defects in the manufacturing of the product, or the number of errors associated with the service that is being provided by the company. And the variable measurement applies to the dimensional qualities of the product or service. So the attribute is simply just a statement of the measurement or the quality measurement, a statement of the quality measurement of that product or service, just to indicate or just to mention, how many defects that has been found on this smartphone, or how many defects have been found on the car after it has been manufactured, or how many errors were identified in this particular service that was provided. So it's really just mentions. And the variable measurement will be the more specific details of the defect or error. Right? So the dimensional qualities, so the length, or sometimes you probably have come across, say, clothing, right? So the clothing, it says there that it is this particular size, but then when you try it on, it's either bigger than the size indicated on the clothes, or it is smaller. So that is the what they call the defect or the non-conformance of that particular dimensional quality for the clothing or for the shirt or whatever it is. Yeah, same thing with weight or the time, okay, the speed of the processor. Okay, there is a defect there, so it should be this fast, but when you test out the phone, for example, it is slower than what it should have been. So these are the variable measurements that can be used for the product, and same thing will apply to the service. So quality measurement in services. Okay, so they give some examples here. So again, these are errors. Okay, when you talk about service, it is to measure the errors that are associated with the service. So for hospital, for example, the accuracy of the tests conducted at the hospital. And again, you might have read some cases in the news where the patient was given an inaccurate test result. And this can be a very serious issue because it concerns the health and the life of a patient. So if the hospital staff, whether it's the doctors or whoever it is conducting the test, they make a mistake or they make result in an inaccurate test result, it will have very serious implications. Or insurance claim accuracy. Obviously, when some patients who use the hospital service, they might need to use the insurance to pay for the hospital service, and then that can also have some inaccuracies if, for example, the hospital did not indicate the accurate information regarding the patient's stay at the hospital, whether the information regarding the patient's operation or inaccuracy in terms of the room rate, kadar untuk bilik yang digunakan oleh sakit. This can also result in inaccurate insurance claims, and this will again be at the disadvantage of the patient. On-time delivery of meals and medication is also subjected to quality control. So meals given to patients who are warded in the hospital has to be done according to the schedule, has to be on time. And same thing with medication, even more important. When the nurses or the doctors give medication to those patients, it must also be done according to the specified schedule. And this can also be measured, and this will also determine the quality of the hospital service. Banks, check processing accuracy and among other things, right? So how accurate do they process the checks? Usually, businesses will tend to use checks to deposit or to make payments. And again, you're dealing with the human factor. So sometimes the bank staff might, key in the wrong details or the wrong amount from the check, and as a result, you get inaccurate deposit or payments using the check. Hotels. So the quality measurements in terms of the what they call that, the housekeeping service. So when you have checkouts, when the guests they check out, and before the next guest checks in, so it will be the responsibility for the housekeeping to make sure that the rooms are clean on time. And if they are not able to clean the rooms according to the specified time frame, then this will cause delays in the check-in for the guests, and this will be bad for the hotel's image and business. Checkout time. So how long does it take to check out from the hotel? And number of complaints. So sometimes guests will have various complaints on regarding the facilities, for example, whether it's the air conditioning, whether it's the bed, the not enough towels, or there are no what do you call that, toiletries in the bathroom, and so on, whatever it is that the customer or the guests are not happy with, then they make complaints to the hotel. And again, like we discussed in the previous chapters, they can also fill in those survey cards and so on. And then the management will tend to look at that as a measure of the hotel's service. Ambulance, right? Same thing as well, where the service quality measurement in terms of the response time. So how long does it take for the ambulance to arrive at the scene? From the moment that they receive the call, the dispatch call, to the time it takes them to reach the patient or the scene of the accident, or whatever it is, that will also be measured. And then that will be the indicator for the quality of the ambulance service. And then some examples for the quality and manufacturing in terms of the category of defects. Okay, so defects is general, and you have different types or categories of defects. So you have the critical defects, which will result in very dangerous or unsafe conditions for the user, whoever is using the product. So if the product contains very critical defects, it can be very dangerous to the health or even dangerous to the life of the customer or the consumer who is using the product. Especially if you're talking about products which are highly flammable, okay, mudah terbakar, or products that may explode if it contains too many defects. Okay, that can be very dangerous for the user. Okay, and not just about using, but even maintaining the product, meaning you keep the product for a long time. Okay, if it has too many defects, it can eventually explode. It can eventually malfunction, which might cause injury to the user. And you might have also come across some news where some products, like those aerosol cans, spray cans, or even the fire extinguisher, okay, karena tiba-tiba dia meletup because they found out there were some defects on the product, and it can end up injuring or even killing the consumer. And then you have the major defects, so they are not as critical. Okay, they are not life-threatening, but it is still likely to result in the failure or materially reduce the usability of the product. Okay, when the product has major defects, it is not harmful, but it will result in the product being unusable. And still, it is not good for the consumer because they have purchased the product, especially when you talk about products which are at a high cost, very expensive products, but they end up being unusable. So it is a loss to the consumer. Okay, they have paid so much, but then they can't use the product. And it will also have negative implications on the company itself as well. And then you have minor defects, so no likely materially reduced usability of a unit, and will not have any bearing on the effectiveness of the unit or the product. Okay, so minor defects are defects that will not have any significance, will not have any implication on the usability or the effectiveness. So even though they have the defect, the consumer can still use the product. It might not look very nice. It might have some dents or some other minor defects, but overall, you can still use the product. So this is what they call the minor. Usually these are things like, the aesthetic defects, like as I mentioned now, the dents, okay, or it might be discoloration, okay, warna dah pudar, tapi masih boleh digunakan. Alright, so these are minor defects. Okay, next is the concept of cost of quality. The cost of quality referring to the cost of avoiding poor quality product or services, or the cost incurred as a result of poor quality product or service. So actually two things here. One is the cost the company will have to bear to avoid the product from having poor quality, or the service from having poor quality. So they have to spend a little extra to avoid poor quality product and services. And the other one is the cost they will have to also pay as a result of poor quality products or services. So this cost of quality basically is translating the defects or errors into the language of management, which is, of course, money. Right? That's the language of management. They only think of in terms of the money, the cost, the financial aspects of a product or service. So any defects, whether it's the major or critical and even minor defects or errors in terms of inaccuracy, slow service, can often result in or can affect the monetary elements of the business. So obviously, if news spreads out that this product made by the company was very defective, it has major defects, it will cause other consumers to not purchase that product. And even customers who have bought the product, they might ask for a refund. So they're not only losing the income, but they are having to give back money to the customer, and this will be an unthinkable situation for the management. Okay. Dah jualan tu menurun, kena bayar balik pada pengguna. So they want to avoid this at all costs, and that is why they have the cost of quality. So provides a basis for identifying improvement opportunities and successful improvement programs. Okay, so the cost of quality is the foundation to help the company identify what areas of the product or services that they can improve on, and establish improvement programs so that the product or service will continue to be of quality and will not experience any defects or errors. And this is what they get from the cost of quality. So there are some categories of the cost of quality, or the quality cost, they also call it. First one is the prevention cost. Okay, prevention cost. So investments made to keep the non-conforming products, meaning the products that might have defects or services that will have errors, from occurring and reaching the customer or the consumer. So again, this is investments. So when we talk about investments, meaning the additional or extra cost the company will need to make to prevent the product or services from being non-conforming, meaning prevent the product or services from having defects or errors. And that's why they call it prevention cost. So the investments involved in terms of the prevention costs include the quality planning costs. So even before you manufacture the product or before you provide the service, you have to have that quality planning. Okay, you might need external consultants in order to help with the quality planning. And again, you have, as I mentioned now, you have these other companies, or you have private companies, or even individuals who offer their services in terms of quality planning. And the company will have to pay that company or pay that individual to help them with that quality planning. Process control cost. Okay, so the process of manufacturing or the process of providing services will need to be controlled, and this will also involve some cost. Okay, in terms of the monitoring of the manufacturing process, for example. So you need to have extra tools to monitor the manufacturing process from start to finish, make sure that the process is of quality. Information system cost. Okay, so you might need to use some software or any IT systems that help to collect information, organize, arrange information, and display information, so that the management can identify whether or not the product or service might have any defects or errors. And then training and general management costs. So to train the staff, for example, okay, to enhance their skills, whether in terms of manufacturing, okay, the manufacturing employees, or like we discussed in the previous chapters, the training of your custom or your counter service staff or the customer service staff. They will need to be trained as well, and this will also incur costs to the company. Okay, so all these costs are investments made by the company to prevent the defects or errors from occurring. And then you have next one is the appraisal cost. So when you say appraisal, it's meaning that you cost untuk membuat penilaian. Okay, you appraise. When you appraise, you are making an assessment ataupun penilaian terhadap produk atau service. So the appraisal is to ensure the conformance of the product or services to the requirements, untuk pastikan produk ataupun perkhidmatan dia menepati ataupun mematuhi syarat-syarat. Okay, sama mana syarat-syarat proses pembuatan ataupun syarat dari segi penyampaian perkhidmatan. That is the appraisal and also requires cost when you evaluate or assess something. So you have the test and inspection costs. Okay, so companies will have to bear the cost of testing the product and inspect the product. Okay, so when they inspect the product, they go through in detail. Okay, they look at every aspect, every angle of the product to make sure there are no defects, there are no dents, okay, there are no scratches, no discoloration, and so on. And they test the product to see its usefulness, whether it can be used, whether there are any defects in the use of the product. This will also incur cost. Instrument maintenance cost. Okay, so the instruments that are used to test and inspect the products before they are sold to the consumer. So when they test and inspect, they will use tools. They use instruments or machines to test and inspect products, and they have to maintain them as well. So this is another additional cost for the appraisal cost. And third one is process measurement and control cost. So the cost of measuring and controlling the process of the manufacturing or the process of the service being provided, that will also incur cost on the company. Third one is internal failure cost. So this is the second definition for the cost of quality. Okay, the cost incurred due to poor quality product or service. Okay, so this is the cost incurred as a result of the defects or errors found after the product has been produced, but before it is delivered to the customer. Okay, so they have already manufactured the product, and when they inspect the product, they find that there are defects. Okay, it can be either critical or major or minor defects. So this will incur costs on the company in terms of scrapping and reworking the product. So bila dia dah buat appraisal, dia dapati produk tu banyak sangat defect, especially major defects. They have to get rid of the product, scrap it kalau dapat, and then they have to remanufacture the product with the improvements or adjustments to make sure that the new output does not contain the same defect. Okay, the cost of corrective action. So the cost it takes for the management to take the corrective action on the defects. So the cost, whether it's the defect was caused due to machine breakdown, mungkin mesin tu rosak tengah manufacture product yang menyebabkan produk tu banyak defect. So the corrective action is to repair the machine or to get a new machine to replace the faulty machine, and this will have a cost on the company. Downgrading cost. So sometimes it's not about upgrading your machine. Sometimes you need to downgrade. Probably the software or the machine, the tools was too advanced for the process. And that's why it resulted in defects. So the company will have to downgrade the machine or downgrade the software, and even that will incur cost. And process failure cost. So the cost that has to be borne by the company due to the overall failure of the manufacturing process. So that is the internal failure cost. And the fourth one is external failure cost, and this is the cost that is borne by the company after the product has reached the consumer or the customer. Okay, so the cost the company will have to bear due to customer complaints and returns. So as I mentioned just now, the refund. Right? So when customers are unhappy with the product because it has too many defects, they'll return the product to the company and will demand a refund. So that is a cost of to the company when they have to give back the money to the customer. And then product recall cost and warranty claims. Okay, so when the product has already reached the customer, the consumer, and then they find out that the product contains defects, so they have to recall the product. And I'm sure whether you've came across some of the news regarding what was it again? The tires of a certain company. Okay, so the company had to recall the car, not just the tire, but the entire cars had to be recalled because the tires that they used had defects, okay, and which could have resulted in injuries or even death if the tires had malfunctioned, they had exploded or busted, and might cause accidents. So they have to recall, and any customers affected by the defects will also claim the warranty, and this will require the company to spend more in terms of the recall cost and the warranty costs and the product liability cost. So when the product is no longer functional, it cannot be used by the consumer, it is not effective, then the cost of the product in terms of the drop of sales. Okay? So even though you're not spending money, but the cost of the product having too many defects is the decline in sales, meaning you are losing money, and that is also something that is the same as incurring a cost. Okay, so you have the cost of quality in this illustration. So for the organization, okay, they bear the cost when it comes to the prevention and appraisal and internal failure. Okay, and the customers, once they receive the product, then that is when the organization or the company will have to deal with external failure cost. So according to this, though the no source mention the source of the information, but it is said that the cost of quality is usually associated with internal and external failure cost. Okay, so 60 to 90% of the cost of quality having to be borne by the company. Deals with these two types of costs. Prevention and appraisal doesn't involve that much cost. Okay, next is quality cost in service organization. So in terms of manufacturing, the quality cost is product oriented, as you already seen just now. Okay, the products are the ones that have defects in the manufacturing process. So when you have companies that deal with services, the quality costs are usually the labor dependent, meaning the staff, the employees involved with the service of that company. And the labor of the company or the service usually involves 75% of the total quality cost. So as mentioned just now, when it comes to services, the non-performance deals with errors, kesilapan, error in the service. And the errors are usually the result of the labor or the staff or employees. Okay, so the customer service the counter service might not have given proper service, or they give wrong information, or the customer service representative that we call again might not have given us the right information, or they are unable to help. Okay, or the other services like the maintenance service, those who come to the house to repair our products which are faulty, they might have done something wrong and the product is still not functioning. So these are the errors involved or committed by the labor or the staff or employees. So external failure costs are less relevant to services, yes, such as warranty and field support. The process related costs, such as the customer service, okay, again, like when you call customer service hotline, and those involved in the complaint handling. Okay, the employees involved with managing the complaints. And lost customers are the areas which are affecting the service quality the most. Okay, the process related costs. So as I mentioned, like when you say the customer service, so when customers call, the customer service employee might not have the knowledge. They might not be able to help the customer with their issue, or they might be unprofessional in how they had managed the call. Okay, they might have answered the customer in a very rude way, for example. Okay, that will be the process related error, and this will incur costs when the customer will feel that they do not want to use that company's service anymore, and they will switch to another company. And same thing with complaint handling. So when you call to make complaints, or you key in the complaints on the company's website, but then there's no action taken by the company to deal with your complaint, that will also result in customers being dissatisfied and lost customers as well because of the poor services. So this is the critical area where uh, the quality of costs in the service organizations happen. For internal failure costs, might not be as evident. So internal failure cost dia tak ketara sangat. Okay. So internal failure, external failure cost untuk perkhidmatan dia tak ketara. Okay. The main one is the process related cost. Okay, and next one is the scope of performance measurement. So the purpose of the scope of performance measurement is providing direction and support So you need the performance measurement to provide the company with information that will help them in their efforts for continuous improvement. Penambahbaikan berterusan. So when it comes to quality of the product or service, it's not a one-off effort, right? Not a one-off. Has to be continuous, because companies can never predict when a defect might happen or when an error might happen in the service. So you need performance measurements for continuous improvements to ensure that you can identify defects or errors early on. And then the performance measurements also help identify trends and progress. So when you measure, the quality dimension or the performance dimension of a product, you can see a trend. And the trend will tell the company that this area has a problem. And from there, they can take necessary action to deal with that particular problem. Okay? So the trends, the pattern, in other words, the pattern of the product's defects or the service error will help the company identify which area needs to be improved on. Thirdly, facilitating understanding of cause and effect. So again, the performance measurement helps companies to understand the correlation, the cause and effect. So when they detect the error or defect of a product or service, then they can use the performance measurement to look back and identify what was the cause of that defect or error. So when they can identify the cause, then they can take action as well to rectify or to correct the problem. And then performance measurements allow performance comparison to benchmarks. Okay, as I mentioned just now early on, the benchmarks that you have in those websites that review the smartphones, for example, or cars and any other products. Okay, and they have all these graphs and charts. So when you have these graphs, charts, or illustrations, it helps the company to make comparisons. Okay, comparisons within their own company's products, and also comparison between their products and their competitors' products. And this helps identify which area of their product that can be improved on in terms of quality. And number 5, providing a perspective of the past, present, and future. So in the overall planning process of the product or service. So having performance measurements gives you the information about the past, the quality of the previous model of the product that you manufactured. It gives you the information about the current or the present quality, and from there you can plan for the future in terms of how to improve the quality of your product or service. Okay, so next is the designing effective performance measurement. So how do you design effective performance measurement? So a company must first of all select the performance measures. And again, the companies can use that SMART approach as we saw just now. Okay, it depends on the company. They might have other approaches in terms of what or which performance measures they're going to use for depending on their product that they have manufactured or service that they provide. Second one is link the measures to the strategy. Okay, so you link the measures to the strategy of the manufacturing process or the strategy used in terms of the service provided by the company. So you have to try to link, try to connect the performance measures with the strategy of your product or service. And then you align strategic and process level measurements. So After you link these two, then the companies have to try to align to make sure that the measurement for the quality and the strategy are aligned. If they are properly aligned, if they match each other. And lastly, you audit the measurement system. You have to evaluate the measurement system that you use to measure the quality. So this is a very general approach used by the companies. Okay, so we'll take our second and final break, and then we'll come back. We'll go into or we'll finish the remaining slides. Okay, for chapter 7. So we'll continue after this break. let's finish the remaining slides for chapter 7. So next is the balance scorecard. So the balance scorecard is a tool to measure the quality performance using financial and non-financial measures. So I'm not sure whether you cover this in any of your other subjects that deal with um, accounting or management subjects. So you have this balance scorecard approach used by many companies. So it's basically a traditional financial and accounting plus data on customers and markets, human resource suppliers, performance, and so on. So it's a combination of different elements in which the quality performance is measured and the data is found on this balanced scorecard. So the purpose is to translate strategy into measures that communicate vision to the organization. So the balance scorecard is a tool that helps to uh, I say align the company's strategy when it comes to the products and services into measures of that strategy. So when the strategy can be measured, that will give the company a clear picture in terms of the performance of the product or service and what can be done to make improvements in the future. Right, so this is the general purpose of the balance scorecard. So there are several perspectives that you have in terms of the balance scorecard. Okay, so you have the financial perspective of the balanced scorecard. So this is the measure of the ultimate results that the business provides to its shareholders. So on the financial aspect, on the financial side, the balance scorecard is about measuring the profitability. As an example, right, the profitability of the company itself, the overall company, the revenue or the income growth for that particular year, for example, the return on investments. So if the company had made investments, okay, so what were the returns, pulangan daripada pelaburan yang dibuat oleh syarikat berkenaan. So these measures will be found on the balance scorecard, and again, this is to align with the strategy of the company when it comes to the profit atau keuntungan, the strategy when it comes to the revenue, and same thing with the strategy in terms of investment. So these are the strategies that can be measured, and the results will be found on the balance scorecard. Second one is internal perspective. So focuses attention on the performance of the key internal processes that drive the business. So this is the part where they measure the internal process. So again, the manufacturing process, the uh, from start to finish, when it comes to assembling the products. So the process that it goes through, it will be measured to determine the quality of the process. So examples of the internal perspective, the quality levels, the productivity, okay, how many products they can produce within a certain time frame, the cycle time, okay, how How fast do they move on from one stage to the next, or from the overall product? When they finish one product, how long does it take for them to restart and begin the next process of manufacturing? Okay, the overall cost of the process. These are the internal perspectives, okay, that can be measured as well. And again, this also is in line with the strategy of the company when it comes to the internal process. The customer perspective focuses on customer needs and satisfaction, as well as market share. So the balance scorecard will contain the information regarding the quality performance in terms of the level of service. How satisfied is the customer with the service provided by the company? And also repeat business, meaning that how many times does the same customer continue to buy or use the same service given by the company. So you have repeat customers, right? Customers who keep on using your services. And again, these are things which are measured or can be measured, and the results will be indicated in the balance scorecard. And then the next one is the innovation and learning perspective. So this involves the performance measurements of the people and infrastructure of the company. So they will measure things like the intellectual assets. When we talk about intellectual assets, things like the people behind the research and development of the company, and those who are involved in the innovation and creativity aspects of the company. Things like the employee satisfaction, how happy, how satisfied are the employees working in your company, that can be measured. Market innovation, so how innovative is the company in producing new products. And I think we've already covered this in the previous chapters. We have innovation and creativity. Innovation is creating something new that has not been done before. And then the development of skills among the people or the employees. And that can also be measured in terms of the frequency that you send your staff to training, any workshops or seminars that are held to enhance the skills of the employees. So this can be measured. All right, so the illustration here is about the vision and strategy in the context of the four perspectives. And this is one of the examples that you can often see when it comes to the balance scorecard. Yeah, of course, there are many different variations or different templates that you have for the balance scorecard. So this is just one of them. Okay, and the company will then have to make sure they are aligned. Okay, those four perspectives are aligned to the company's vision and strategy. So the characteristics of a good balanced scorecard contains both leading and lagging measures and indicators. So the lagging measures are related to the outcomes. Okay, the outcomes of the company's uh, product sales or services provided. So the lagging measures, they will tell the company what has happened. Right? So what has happened in terms of the manufacturing process or the internal process, what has happened in terms of the customer satisfaction, They will tell the company what has happened in terms of employee satisfaction, all those things. So that's what they call the lagging measures and indicators. And then the leading measures and indicators are the performance drivers. So they help to predict what will happen, okay, for the company in terms of their product and service quality. So based on the information they have gathered on the balance scorecard. So it helps the company to make those predictions in terms of what will happen if based on the current information that they have on the scorecard, whether they will need to make improvements or whether customers will continue to buy their products, whether customers will continue to use their service or not. That will depend on what they have indicated on the balance scorecard. Okay, and then next one is the managing information resources. So the idea of measuring the quality is basically information. Right? So when you look at, or when you sift through everything, all these cost of quality, the balance scorecard, all those things, it all comes down to information. Okay, that is what the quality measurement is telling the company in terms of their product or services. So it's all about information. So if you don't measure the results, you cannot tell success from failure of your product or service or your whole company. In other words, if you don't have information, you cannot analyze the progress of your company, whether you are succeeding in your market or you are failing. And you cannot tell whether your products are succeeding or whether your services are successful or whether they are failing. So to know that, you need to have that information of the measurement results. So once you have the information from the measurement results, you are able to identify and differentiate between the success and failure of your products and services. And from there, you can reward the success and you can take action on the failure. So that's why it's very vital for companies to have that information, especially when it comes to the quality measurements. So organizations need information and performance measures for three main reasons. First one is to lead the organization in a particular direction. And like many things we've covered in the previous chapters, it also talks about pointing the company in that direction. So companies, they need that guidance to point them where they are going in terms of their overall business, where they are going in terms of the product they are producing, and where they are going in terms of the services that they are providing, and that requires information. So without information, companies will just blindly go wherever they want, and it might have negative implications on their overall business if they are operating without information. And then number two, to manage the resources needed to travel in that direction by evaluating the effectiveness of action plans. So you need information as well as performance measures to manage the resources you're needing to get or to move in the direction that you establish based on your vision and strategy. So again, you need information to have a direction, meaning you set your strategy and your vision, where you want to go for the company. And you also need information on managing the resources you need to achieve your vision and strategy. And number three, companies need information and performance measures to be able to operate the processes in their organization, okay, the manufacturing of the services, and they need information for continuous improvement, because the information you get from the performance measures helps the company to identify, what are the defects and errors, and based on that information, they can make the improvements. Right. So these are the three main reasons why the companies need to have information and performance measures. And it's not just any data or information that the company requires. The information that they need, whether it's for the direction, whether it's for the managing resources, or whether it's for the operation of their processes, information has to be reliable, they're accurate, user-friendly, and secure, and also available to everyone at any time. So information in terms of reliability, it can be trusted. Okay, the information you get, you can depend on that information to make the decisions regarding the products and services. Accurate, okay, maklumat kena tepat, has to be accurate, okay, regarding the product or services, or the employees, the HR, human resource, customer satisfaction, everything has to be accurate. Again, this also helps with the decision making. User friendly, meaning it's easy to understand, whether it's the management, the employees, the marketing personnel, whoever is reading the information, they can understand. And it's presented in a way that can be understood. Secure, meaning that information is safe. It cannot be simply publicized, because this is very, you can say, confidential information. It's only for the eyes of the company. So the information regarding the performance measures and so on has to be safe. Okay. Has to be secure. It cannot be stolen, or it cannot be exposed to the rivals, and so on. And information has to be available, meaning anyone in the company can have access to the information. Okay. Accessibility to the information anytime they want. Okay. When they want to refer to the information, they can have access. So to ensure the reliability of the information or the data is for internal cross-functional teams or external auditors to conduct audits of the processes used to collect data. Right? And this is for the reliability, meaning the information can be trusted. So to ensure that, you need to have, whether it is the a team formed internally, from different departments. So you have a team to audit the process, or they can get the services of external auditors, which of course will bear additional costs, but sometimes they use external auditors to check the processes the company uses to collect the data. Okay, they will check the performance measures to see whether the information that is collected from those processes provides reliable information to the company. And if they identify certain processes is not giving reliable data, then they can make the necessary corrections. And then organizations that share the results often exhibit better performance. So again, the accessibility of the information. Information is available, they share with everyone. The employees, the management, the shareholders, they all have access to information, and companies that do that usually perform better compared to their competitors. So one of the reasons is that when you share this information within your organization, you're able to obtain various feedback from different groups within your organization. Some might have, unique ideas, or they might have very good ideas on how you can improve the quality of your product or services. So the idea can come from the employees themselves. The ideas can come from the shareholders as well. Okay? And then these ideas can be utilized to enhance the performance of the company. So the critical roles of information technology in managing information. Okay, so of course, companies need to ensure data accessibility, meaning that again it is available to anyone at any time, which means the company needs to have a good network. All right, if your network is good, it is fast, then anyone in the company can have access, can readily access the information and utilize it. And then you have to have reliable hardware and software. Right, the hardware of obviously the computers that they're using, and the software, the programs that they use to manage the information, okay, has to be reliable to ensure the integrity of the performance systems. Okay, if the computers, they keep malfunctioning, right, always lagging or hanging, or the blue screen of death selalu keluar, okay, that's not good for the company. So they make sure that the hardware they use, the computers they use, are reliable, up to date as well. And software, same thing as well. Software has to be updated to make sure it is compatible with their computer systems and so on. So this will ensure the smoothness of the information that is being processed and reported. Number 3, confidentiality and security. Right, the security of your information. To prevent the hacking from your rivals, or prevent hackings from anyone. Okay, to prevent data leaks. Okay, so even though the information is accessible to anyone in the company, they still need to go through these security protocols. Okay, passwords and so on, okay, or any other security features that can help to ensure that information is secure. And then number 4, current data and information. Okay, so you need to have data which is constantly updated. Okay, so the role of the IT, it will be to make sure that the other sections in the business or the company, they will provide them with the latest information, latest data, so they can update that in the system. So once you have updated data, then that can be used for the improvement of the company, or to improve the product or services based on the updated or latest data that they have in the system. So the benefits, okay, finally the benefits of good information management when it comes to the performance measures, especially. So the company is able to know what is the level of the customer or the service the customer is receiving. And again, this can only be done by having information and good information management. updated data, latest information. So company will know what is the level of service that is being provided to the customers. And then provide concrete feedback to the workers. Okay, so based on the information on the performance measures, it provides feedback to the employees, whether they are in the manufacturing part or in the customer service section. Okay, so based on the feedback from the customers, it is updated in the system, and then they can provide feedback. And it can also identify what areas that need to be improved on. Number 3, establish a basis for reward and recognition. Okay, again, as mentioned in the previous slides, when you have information, you can identify the success and failure. And once you can identify success, you can reward the success. So if the quality measures were fulfilled, okay, they fulfill the requirements for the quality, and the product is satisfying the customer, so the company can reward those involved for the good work. And by having that reward, it will motivate those employees, to continue producing quality products and services. And same thing as well for the failure. In number 4, so when you have information, then you can identify the failure as well. And from that information, you can take the necessary corrective action to prevent those failures from occurring again. And then lastly, you reduce the cost of operations through better planning. So with information, you can make quality plans. So when you have better planning, when you have quality planning based on the information that you have, this will help to reduce the cost of the company's operations. They can find ways on how they can save costs, because they have planned out in terms of what they want to do and how they are going to achieve their strategy. Okay, so it saves the company's cost. All right, so that is the end of chapter 7 on measuring quality. All right, if there are no questions, then we can end the class for today. So next Monday, as I mentioned earlier on, will be groups 2 and 3 to present. So make sure you upload the presentation in the Google Classroom, okay, before your presentation. And group 4, again, you can also present if you want next Monday if you are ready. If not, then you'll be presenting the following week. Okay, and then later on, I'll update in the WhatsApp group once I have information regarding the final test. Okay, after I've communicated with the resource person. So with that, we'll end the class for today. Okay, so I'll see you all next Monday. So stay safe. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
welcome.